5, 6, 7, 8.
Welcome to the EX podcast, where every week I talk with business leaders, authors, and disruptors on how the workplace is changing. This podcast brings a different lens to the conversation around HR transformation, company culture, and employee engagements. It offers a brand and customer experience perspective rather than a traditional HR perspective. Why? Because companies have to think of themselves as employment brands if they hope to attract and retain talents. It is time we put people first to rehumanize the workplace. Simply because leaders who don't care about the employees will eventually be surrounded by people who don't care about their business. Today's guest is Jerome Ternynck, founder and CEO of SmartRecruiters, the hiring success company. Today with Jerome, we talk about how the talent acquisition space has changed and what TA leaders must do to adapt to the new reality. What metrics to implement in order to measure the impact of talent acquisition on the business. How to juggle CEO priorities in a fast-growing business while making sure the culture doesn't fall apart. How to create a positive candidate experience and optimize the recruiting process. And where he sees talent acquisition in the next 5 years. Support for this podcast is brought to you by Culture Amp. Eliminate the guesswork of company culture with Culture Amp, the world's largest independent employee feedback platform. Culture Amp goes beyond aggregating survey results to deliver rich insights and data-driven action plans on an easy-to-use interface. With a powerful platform, science-backed surveys, and a focus on its customer success, Culture Amp helps you increase employee engagement and build a positive company culture. Start developing a deep understanding of your employees' experience today by visiting cultureamp.com/ex. I hope you enjoyed this conversation with Jerome. And because it takes a good amount of time to produce this podcast, please make sure to review the podcast on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, TuneIn, and YouTube, as it would help promote the content. If you want me to speak at your next events, get some advice on your EX initiatives, or send me feedback, suggestions for future topics or guests, you can reach me at svincent@exsummit.com or on Twitter @EX_summit. All right, let's get to it. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the EX podcast. Very excited for today's guest, Jerome Ternynck. Jerome is coming from the Bay Area. He's the founder and CEO of SmartRecruiters. Jerome, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stefan.
So beyond being a French national like me, you've got quite an interesting background. Can you tell us how you went from the military to staffing services, then to recruitment technology?
Yeah, actually, I fell into recruitment. Almost feels like I was destined to do that. So after I spent some time in the military, kind of practiced my leadership skill as a lieutenant in the paratroops, I actually wanted to create a business, and I moved to Prague in the Czech Republic. This is 1993. So right after the Berlin Wall fell, and I'm asking people around, like, for business ideas, what do you think I should be doing? And many people are like, oh, there's so much things you can do in this country, but gee, it's so hard to find good people. And, so I thought, well, why not do a recruitment agency? I didn't have any capital, so I knew I wasn't going to start a telecoms company, right? So I started a recruitment agency, and really explored that for many years, about 7 years total. Expanded the recruitment agency across multiple segments, like high-end executive search, organized the first job fairs, the first RPO, like different layers of recruiting services, and did that in Czech, but then also throughout Central and Eastern Europe. Like we were one of the first headhunters in Moscow and in Ukraine and in Hungary, Poland, Bulgaria, Romania, like across all of Central and Eastern Europe. Had a lot of fun doing that. But then the internet came about, and I was like, oh, gee, this is going to change how people recruit. And so I sold my staffing agency and I stepped into recruitment technology. Moved to London and convinced Accenture to finance my first software company, and I built one of the first applicant tracking systems.
Nice.
A company called Mr. Ted, which was a really good adventure, and that's how I got into recruitment technology.
Okay, and then you moved from London to the States.
Yeah, so London, this is in the late 99, and so, it's the middle of the internet bubble. Like, I started this applicant tracking system company, Mr. Ted, and we raised a lot of money, and we deployed one of the first recruiting software ever, actually, selling it to large companies, France Telecom, Siemens, Danone, Sodexo, all, Accenture, all customers, and I did that for about 10 years until 2010, and realized that, while the applicant tracking system, so this first generation of recruiting software, really kind of helped automate the file cabinets and help people apply online, they really didn't make recruiting easy. And so in 2010, after I sold Mr. Ted to a private equity company, I thought, this is time for me to try and really do this in a smarter way, in a better way. And so I moved to San Francisco here to start SmartRecruiters, and really being focused on how do we connect people to jobs at scale, which I think the connection between people and jobs is essentially a technology problem, and I'd like to be the one who solves that.
Awesome. What does SmartRecruiters do exactly?
Yeah, so SmartRecruiters were a talent acquisition suite. So we sell a software that helps companies attract, select, and hire amazing talent on demand. So the software is used by large organizations to manage all the functionalities around attracting candidates. So think job advertising, websites, campaigns, landing pages. It's really a marketing layer of software. Candidates can apply in the system. We make it very easy for them to apply. And then the software helps organizations manage all the interview and selection process. So we make it collaborative. Hiring managers get involved, and hiring team. We make the hiring process more transparent, more fluid, also a lot less subjective, because it is actually more transparent in the platform, all the way to hire, so offer letters, contracts, and then we throw the new hires into the payroll system or the HR system, and we do this for about 1,000 large companies around the world, and help them with their hiring processes.
So you mentioned it's a bit like a marketing platform. Do your clients also use it to engage with the candidates who were not selected in the first place?
Yeah, absolutely. And they do this in two ways. They do this by keeping those candidates in their system, in their database. If they agree to, of course, there's a privacy element to that. So we ask candidates for the authorization. And if they agree, then the customers would keep their file or their resume on record. Then we actually have an AI and artificial intelligence algorithm that whenever you create a new job, it's going to go back to all the candidates you have received and to all your employees, actually, and dynamically suggest matching candidates to the recruiter. So this is one of the ways that recruiters actually find candidates, by tapping into the pool of people who have shown interest in their organization before.
Talent acquisition has changed considerably, as you mentioned, with the digital transformation, the economic boom, the scarcity of available talents, and the millennials transforming the workplace. However, many organizations still manage talent acquisition in a very old way. What do TA leaders must change to adapt to the new reality?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right, Stefan, in saying that the TA function is changing, and it's increasingly a competitive function, right? Like if you go to CEOs, and it's actually not a surprise that 75% of CEOs put acquiring top talent in their top 3 priorities across the entire business, because if you are able to acquire the right talent, then guess what? You're going to win. So increasingly, businesses look at recruiting as a competitive advantage, and they are looking to make this a competitive advantage. So we see the transformation of TA from what was a back office HR process, faster, cheaper, and compliant, into a strategic function where people invest in recruiting to hire great talent, just like they invest in marketing to get more customers. What does that mean for TA leaders? For TA leaders, it's a unique opportunity to actually reinvent themselves and to be leading a function that is now a value-driven function that is measured by business outcomes and that behaves as a value function, a bit like marketing evolved over the last couple of years. So we call this new function hiring success, right? Which like customer success, it's hiring success. And you achieve hiring success, which is the ability to attract, select, and hire amazing talent on demand and on budget. You achieve hiring success through 3 core pillars. One is about candidate and candidate experience. How do you find candidates? So the ability to find and engage and nurture candidates, which really speaks to marketing and the candidate experience.
Yes.
Two, it's about the hiring managers and the hiring teams. How do you actually drive a good collaborative conversational process to actually identify, select, and convince the best candidates to come join you? So this is about hiring manager engagement and the teamwork inside the hiring teams. And then third, it's about recruiter productivity. And as recruiters have more and more work, more and more sources of candidates, more and more processes to manage, more and more tools to do so, what is the platform, right? So if recruiting is like sales and marketing, which it is, now what is the sales force actually infrastructure beyond this? What is the platform on which they do it? And that's really, I think, how businesses today, modern TA leaders anchor their vision. Candidate experience, manager engagement, and recruiter productivity. And so to do that, you need a talent acquisition suite. Like you need an end-to-end talent acquisition platform that allows you to achieve those goals, gives you modern marketing capabilities to target candidates, a collaboration and easy to use platform for managers who are busy and they just need to review a candidate, submit a feedback, go to an interview, approve a job, approve an offer. So they need something that's nice and easy, and then a full platform for the recruiters. And I mean, this is really an evolution of the market that is a fantastic opportunity for TA leaders.
You mentioned that talent acquisition has to be connected to business outcomes. Can you share with us some of the key metrics that you advise recruiters to use to be able to tie the TA initiatives and activities to business performance?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, historically, recruiters have been measured by cost or by back office type metrics, so process metrics, time to hire, cost per hire, faster, cheaper. And we recommend TA leaders to get away from that and to actually measure the function around 3 core dimensions of cost, quality, and time. The first, on the budget side, so cost, we define a hiring budget, which is the total cost of recruiting, internal and external, divided by the salary of new hires. So that gives you a simple number that a CEO can easily understand. Say, okay, I invest 7% of my new hire payroll in recruiting, or 10% or 9%. You can compare this across industries. And it's much more telling than saying, okay, I spend $2,307 cost per hire, right? Which doesn't tell anybody anything. That's on the hiring budget side. The second is the hiring velocity. Instead of saying my time to hire is 53 days, we say what percentage of jobs are filled on time. If you say 57% of my positions are filled on time. That means actually 43 are not. And that's very telling for a CEO because they understand the impact of that, right? And so you want that hiring velocity to be towards the 90%, right? So 90+% of positions are filled on time. That's hiring velocity. And then the last one is around hiring quality, which historically has been, you can look a year later, 2 years later in performance management, are you hiring the right people? What we do there is we created a net hiring score, the NHS, which really works like an NPS score that is measured 90 days after hire for full-time roles. And it asks the manager on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a fit is this person? And then it also asks the candidate on a scale of 1 to 10, how much of a fit is this job? And so you get a net hiring score, which is positive or negative, yes. But effectively, if you are positive, you know that you're hiring more amazing matches, like people who have said, yeah, awesome, best job ever, best candidate ever, then you are hiring people who are like, not sure about this one. And that's a very clear delineation. And so with this, you end up with a scorecard that has a net hiring score. We're at positive 27. We're hiring amazing people with a hiring velocity of 94%. We're hiring them on time, and we're spending 9% of new hire payroll as a budget, and that gives you a scorecard. And you can manipulate those different KPIs in a board discussion to say to the CEO, look, if you give me more money, I'll get more the velocity up, or if we lower the bar, then maybe. So you can actually have a proper conversation around those three core metrics.
That's awesome. I have a question for you regarding hiring velocity. You mentioned we need to look at the percentage of positions filled on time. How do you define the on time?
Mm-hmm. So the on time gets defined either in a planning process. Quarterly process, these are the positions we are looking at, or with internal SLAs, service level agreements of how much should it take to replace somebody. And so typically that's an agreement that you set inside the organization, and then position time, expected time to fill are basically entered in the system and tracked.
So you started and you've grown several companies to the acquisition phase. The question is, how do you juggle CEO priorities of growing a business while making sure that the culture doesn't fall apart with the sudden growth of the business?
I think you just focus on culture, and if the culture is right, everything else is right. Like if people are here for the right reasons, if you focus on the why, at SmartRecruiters, we have a strong why. We're here to connect people to jobs at scale. Every single person that actually uses SmartRecruiters to apply to a job, we want that person to get hired, and we're going to be fighting for that person to get hired. And right now we get over 2 million people using SmartRecruiters every month. That's a lot of people across the world, and we fight for them. And if you have a strong why and you back this then with strong values, which is not only why I'm here, but how am I supposed to behave, then the rest of what priorities do I have, how is success measured, what are my obstacles, all of this is like very easy to define, right? At the end of the day, if we know what is the game we are playing together and what are the rules of the game, how we're supposed to behave with each other, then we can easily have fun, and we don't need to define the rest. So as a CEO, I spend most of my time working on culture, on people, on values, and then of course giving everyone a vision and a strategy that actually cascades down. I love it. I mean, I'll be very honest with you that this is the best part of my job. We just closed the year. We grew 100%. We have a budget or a forecast that has us growing another 100% this year. And we were in a whole week of meetings last week. So we had 1,000 customers that came for the Hiring Success Conference in San Francisco. It was a really very, very good time. And it's interesting because you're growing a business with your employees, but you're also really growing a business with your customers, right? And you see that customers want to be, when you have the right culture and the right purpose, it becomes a point where customers want to be a part of it. right? They want to join you. They want to join the movement, and that's exactly what I'm trying to achieve as a CEO. Is like have a purpose and a vision and a movement that people cause almost that people want to join, want to be a part of. Because if they want to be a part of this, then they're going to bring all of their talent and their own culture and their diversity with them, and ultimately we win.
And in a growing company, obviously, as the CEO, you have to juggle about the culture. You have to look at funding. You have to focus on sales and growing the customer base. At what point do you have to either make a selection and a decision on where to delegate and to what and to whom, and where you should pivot or when you should redirect your time? Can you share with us some of your own experience there?
Yeah, of course. I jokingly say that I'm very lazy, and this is my main asset. Obviously, as an entrepreneur, I'm obsessed. I think about the problem I'm trying to solve 24/7. But operationally, I try to be lazy. Try to empower people as much as possible. Just hire amazing people and get out of the way would be a good summary of what I try to do. Now it's hard because when you are a founder, on day one, if you are alone in the office, guess what? You do 100% of the job, and then you hire a friend who's going to do 10%. Now you do 90, and then you hire two friends, and now you're doing 80, and then 300 people later, you're doing a very different job, but you're still contributing a part of it. And so, kind of always pushing work out and giving people the autonomy that they need. So we actually anchor our people development around three core concepts of autonomy, mastery, and purpose. So I know why I'm here. Purpose, autonomy. I'm accountable and entitled to do what I need. I'm autonomous to do what I have to do. And mastery, I'm actually quite good at it. And if you can put people in this magic triangle of autonomy, mastery, and purpose, then they execute really, really well.
We talk a lot on this podcast about applying a customer experience mindset to the HR and the talent acquisition space. And as the war for talent is fierce, as we discussed, the experience companies provide to prospective employees is critical to create that emotional connection and show that the organization actually cares and empathizes with its current and future employees. In your opinion, what is a good candidate experience?
This is almost a sad question, or at least we actually ask the candidate, what do you want? And what the overwhelming response was? Like 80% of them asked for. They said, could you please just let me know where I stand?
Yeah, it's a good one.
That's like most of those people just throw their life as summarized in a resume,
yes.
Right? They throw their life in a black box and they never hear back. Now, if this is coming from a consumer company or from any company, like how likely does that make them to actually be a consumer of that company or to be a customer? Or how does that, even if they get the job, like what do they think about the company? So I think we're really at a very, very basic level of candidate experience. And for all the talk that is being said in all the conferences and so on, most companies still struggle to offer the basics of a good candidate experience. And the reason why is simply because they don't have an actual good technology to do that.
Yeah.
Like how does marketing offer amazing experience to the consumers, or customer success offer amazing? Because they have the technology. And you cannot, with SmartRecruiters, we're in a replacement cycle. So we replace the first generation of applicant tracking systems, the likes of Taleo and Brasring, iSIMS, and all of these guys that were designed in the late 90s. They were designed to automate the 5 cabinets, right? Just to track applicants and to have and that have no sense of experience in it. But if you have a technology that was built 20 years ago, how can you offer a modern experience?
How do you automate and how do you personalize the experience then for candidates? How do you manage the volume of applications with a more personalized response to those candidates. It's very hard to do, but that's what candidates are expecting, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's hard, yes and no. I mean, I do it myself, actually. Whenever I take candidates for jobs that report to me, I reject them myself. And more often than not, I get a nice note back, and I get connections on LinkedIn. I actually got a customer from it last year that was like, "Oh, Jerome, yeah, the experience." Jeromes, he actually was on LinkedIn saying, "Yes, it's the talk was like somebody said, yeah, I just got a rejection letter from Jerome, nice touch." And then somebody else chimed in and said, yep, I got one of those too, but now I'm actually a customer of SmartRecruiters. And it's clear, right? If you are nice with people, then you build equity, brand equity right there. And time is not a problem. Like in SmartRecruiters, you can literally reject 1,000 people in one click if you want. One click, right? It's not hard. And we have an AI that actually reads all the resumes for you, interprets the resume, summarizes them, and builds a short list. So you can go beyond. We highlight the skills of people, relevant jobs, relevant companies. Like we do all of this really nicely. And candidates in the first place who are actually trying to apply, they apply to many jobs because it's a black box. So it's a two-way street. You give me more transparency, then I'm going to apply only to the jobs that I like. And I think we just went, the candidates went for high volume because the recruiters are not responding. And in fact, what you see is that the volume go down and the relevance goes up. Where
do you see talent acquisition in the next 5 years, let's say?
So in the next 5 years, the major trends that we are seeing is, one, the TA function becomes a marketing function, essentially. I think we are seeing more and more customers that are embracing, frankly, what has become basic marketing principles, right? So TA is following exactly the same path that marketing followed a decade ago. And so in the TA function, you're going to find community managers, you're going to find content marketers, you're going to find email marketers, nurture marketers, and more people who are marketing to candidates. I'll give you an example. We have about 100 developers in our own team. We have our development center is in Poland. One of our development centers in Poland, in Krakow, and it's a hard market. It's hard to find software developers. Well, we started a meetup group that is now become really popular. Was it in the summer? We organized our next meetup, and we had 100 spots. The registration closed in 45 minutes after we opened them. We had 100 people standing in the room, listening to the wisdom of one of our engineers to talk about this particular technology. And then we're just collecting resumes, right? Like we have no problem to hire people there. And it's just a marketing effort. Now, if you apply this in traditional recruiting and I pass a job description to a recruiter saying, I need a developer, and they're like, oh my God, let me go to LinkedIn and start calling people around, it's not working. So that's a big, big element. The second is, I think we got to fix diversity and inclusion. I think that that has been kind of becoming top of mind, but for many companies, it's still the icing on the cake, right? Whereas in fact, for me, diversity and inclusion is really the eggs. You cannot bake without it. You cannot build a great workforce. The world is becoming more and more global, more and more diverse. And if you are not building a diverse workforce, you're just silently killing your company. And so I think the diversity and inclusion part of recruiting becomes such an important part. And we had a big big part of our agenda at the Hiring Success Conference last week was about that. And, we had a speaker come as an example. We had a speaker come to talk about neurodiversity. And this young person has autism. And her behavior as an autistic person was sometimes disconcerting, and you're not sure. But she spoke in front of 1,000 TA leaders, and wow. It was like a good 20% of the room was crying, right? And realizing that, I need to think about neurodiversity. It's not just man and woman and black and white and, however you want to define the categories of humans that constitute our beautiful world. So I think that's a good one. And then third and last on the trends, technology is taking over. I think we are the problem of matching people to jobs at scale is really a technology problem. And it's a difficult one because jobs are more and more specialized, right? If you're an Android developer, can you build an iOS app? And if you sell recruiting software, can you sell marketing software? Like the jobs are becoming more and more specialized. But the opportunity that we are missing as an economy that was actually quantified by McKinsey as nearly $3 trillion of missing economic potential by matching people to jobs is really just a technology problem. Because quite frankly, if you say, 5 years ago, it was really hard to find an apartment in Moscow for next week with a view on the Red Square. And now you can pick up Airbnb and you choose from 7 of them and you pick the one you want. I think 5-10 years from now, people will be able to choose jobs in a way that is as easy as picking an apartment now, and vice versa. Companies will be able to attract and get connected to talent in a much more fluid way. So I think the recruiting market is about to become a lot more fluid and a lot more efficient, which is very good news for everybody.
Let's talk about the trends in jobs in the marketplace. We talk a lot about the gig economy. So how do you see recruiting moving forward in talent acquisition with remote work and gig economy and still the needs to have maybe full-time employees? How do you see this pan out?
I think the future of work is more short-term, more granular, more specialized, so more about short-term assignments and more rewarding and flexible work. Now, today, flexibility is scary. Because flexibility means uncertainty, because the supply and demand are not matched in an effective way, and so you'd rather have an imperfect job for life than have a different perfect job every other year, right? But if you make the market more fluid, then it actually makes it a lot easier for people to have better jobs, even if the job changes more frequently, more regularly, and better jobs can be between no job and a job that is difficult but at least exists, or it can be between a job that you don't really like and a job that you actually like. In 70% of, and we're talking about the US here only, but the stats is about the same everywhere. 70% of Americans would like to change jobs this year if they can. 70%. Imagine if 70% of people said they want to change their husband or their wife, right? It would be a pretty bad economy or a bad society. And I think this is what we are suffering from. We're suffering from the lack of fluidity in the jobs market. And while we definitely are inserting more flexibility means more uncertainty for people, and we have to respect that and be careful with that. I think it also means more opportunity for people, and that's generally a good move forward.
It's interesting because it's a concept that is well adopted by employees, right? The fact that they may just be job hopping pretty quick, from one job to another. However, organizations have a hard time understanding it, accepting it, and even defining what the work would be within their own companies to be able to face that new employee mindsets.
Yeah. Yes, and I think they'll have to adapt because there's a nice saying that said the war for talent is over. The candidate won, right? And ultimately, it is what it is, right? As a company, you only exist because you are able to hire great people. And if you're not able to hire great people, then over time, you're just going to go down. And I'm not talking about Google hiring some super smart data scientist, right? If you're Starbucks and you have a barista that's not smiley and friendly, then, the guy who came to Starbucks today might go to Pete's tomorrow and they'll just switch coffee over time, right? So it's any jobs, any level. And I think people who actually who actually are contributing positively, impacting their businesses and their work, drive a lot of change, and businesses have to adapt. And we're seeing this across our customer base. We serve very large companies, including Visa and IKEA, Bosch, Twitter, even LinkedIn actually uses SmartRecruiters to manage all of their own recruiting. And we see across this organization more and more attempts to be flexible, to recognize that, and to match needs, supply and demand internally in a more effective way. And once again, I think technology has a big role to play. Actually, technology is the enabler for that change.
Do you see major differences in talent acquisition from one region of the world to the other based on the customers that you serve, or is it very similar across the globe?
I think the overall intent and purpose is similar. Obviously, jobs and people are jobs and people in any country. At the same time, there are numerous differences that could be cultural, so how people react to work, or regulatory. What do you actually have to do and not do? So US and Europe have two very different ways of managing diversity, for example, right? In the US, they put everybody in categories and it allows them to anonymously track what is happening and to prevent discrimination. In Europe, we say, no, you cannot put people in boxes or in categories, and instead we should offer people a way to apply anonymously, which has other challenges. So that would be a difference. But also culturally, some markets are heavy on job boards, so where people find jobs. Others are heavy on headhunters, so typically people would go to agencies, and so it's a different. Each market is slightly different. The overarching intent to match people to jobs is the same.
Now we're getting into the phase where I'm going to have to ask you some fun questions before we wrap up our conversation. A few years ago in Indianapolis, I did a few stand-up comedies, and I had one routine where I made fun of French people from an American perspective, and I also talked about some of the things that still irritate me in the US, even after spending 10, 15, 20 years in the country. So you've been here for a while, but what are some of the things that still irritate you here in the US that you just can't stand?
That I can't stand.
Yeah,
oh my God. So I can't stand the fact that I still cannot say phenomenal in a good way, and I'm practicing every day to say phenomenal. And we have actually a British, one of our senior member of the management team is from the UK, and he says phenomenal in such a phenomenal way. I'm practicing, so I'm trying to blend in. More seriously, the one thing I really don't like here is the concentration of wealth and the lack of protection for people. I don't like that. I don't like the fact that the people that are weaker in the economy because they have a background that is there, or they newly arrived to the country, or they just don't have the right abilities, or they have a disability, are just left behind. I don't like walking in the streets of the world's richest and most innovative city, San Francisco, and have homeless people everywhere. I think, America should think about more taxes and more protection. So,
is there anything that you really miss from France?
I miss the French. I miss the French. I miss the rent. I miss the French.
Sure.
I'm French. This will never change. We have an office in Paris actually, and about half of our employees are in Europe, so we're actually quite invested in both sides. I love so many things about France, and we got so many things right, including the ability to write about everything and to think that we are not good at. We had our head of product was making a joke the other day as why is the rooster the emblem of France, right? Le coq, and said because it's the only bird that can actually sing a song while having the feet in shape.
Yeah,
and that actually is a good summary of French people and what I love about them.
If you were to invite a historical figure or someone famous to dinner, who would you pick and why?
Nelson Mandela, without a doubt. What he achieved to turn a country around in the way that he did, and given his own personal history, this could have been a serious bloodbath. And he managed through love and through inclusion, he actually managed to turn an entire country around. And I think this is absolutely amazing.
It's one of those events where that are a sort of a not necessarily defining moment in your life, but something that you probably remember. And I remember exactly where I was at and what I was doing when he was freed from prison. Do you remember where you were the day he was released from prison?
No, I don't actually. All right. I was in Prague, I know, but I think that exact day I do not remember.
Okay, no worries.
It was a real figure, and I worked recruiting software. I sold recruiting software in South Africa for a number of years, and the Black Economic Empowerment laws that were passed there that basically forced the country to transition economic power and education over to the previously discriminated people was just absolutely fascinating and done really well. Now, it didn't solve all the problems of South Africa, as we all know, but it really did put everybody on the right direction. So,
yeah. Okay. What was your biggest screw up at work, and what did you learn from it?
My biggest screw up was I launched a recruitment marketing agency in Prague in '94, and we did a joint venture with Publicis at the time, and we came to the market saying, "Oh, you need to advertise and build your employer brand and do this and so on." And people were looking at us with round eyes, and I think we were about a decade too early on that market. So I learned from that timing is everything.
Oh, timing is everything, yeah. Which profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I would like to be an investor in social enterprise. It's actually going to be my next venture. So I think there's many business models that actually can reconcile profit and impact. And I'm involved on the side with a few entrepreneurs, a few ideas around that, and I think this is where the economy will actually get to. I hope, fingers crossed, that capitalism and social protection are going to merge into smart models that are delivering positive impact to society, to the planet, to everything, and returning a profit to the shareholders. Because without the profit to the shareholders, there's just no investment. Without investment, there is no innovation. So I'm a liberal. I fully believe in the cycle of putting money to work and getting money back. But it can be done in a way that actually drives social impact. So I'll be a social entrepreneur. I was thinking maybe one day we create a company whose job is not to, or whose mission is not to create profits, but to create jobs. And you would measure the success of that company by how many people can be positively employed by that organization. That'd be an interesting concept. But there are many social entrepreneurs making a difference, and I would love to get back in there. When I started SmartRecruiters, my Series A pitch, so when I went to see investors in Silicon Valley, they said, "Oh, what do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to eradicate unemployment." This was my mission. And still is actually connecting people to jobs at scale. I want to eradicate unemployment through technology. And so I think the investors here in Silicon Valley, they saw this French guy who wants to eradicate unemployment, and it made them laugh, and they gave us some money to get started. So here we are.
Okay, and to make a side joke that many people probably listening to us wouldn't get it necessarily, but there's already an agency in France that tries to create jobs for a living, INPE, but they're not very successful, yes. I would say.
That is indeed a very French one.
All right. What is the way for our listeners to follow you and SmartRecruiters on social media?
So you'll find SmartRecruiters at smartrecruiters.com, and we have a blog that actually is the Hiring Success Journal, and that talks about the evolution of recruiting and hiring success, to which you can subscribe. And go there through our URL, smartrecruiters.com. And you can find me on LinkedIn, Jerome Ternynck, and I'm welcome connections and questions. I love helping others, especially entrepreneurs or anybody who'd like.
Any last word of advice or wisdom for our listeners?
You are who you hire. Who you hire defines everything. It defines you as a manager. It defines you as a recruiter. It defines you as a human being. So hire wisely.
Very nice way to conclude our conversation today. Thank you so much, Jerome, for being on the show with us.
Thank you, Stefan, for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the EX Podcast. If you want to learn more, visit our website at expodcast.com. If you want to find out more about our next conferences, go to exsummit.com. Finally, you can also find my manifesto on business to employee or B2E branding at b2ebranding.co. See you next week.